Eldridge, that picture's hilarious. All right, so I'm gonna just make sure we're going live on my YouTube channel very quickly. We're not yet, and we will be in a moment. Now we are. Beautiful. So welcome back, everyone. This is a odd episode of What the Rabbis Won't Tell You because we don't have any current representation from the Jewish community here, which makes it hard to dialogue with them, although we do have some members here in the room who are Jewish believers in Jesus. And other than Jewish believers in Jesus here, we have, I believe, 2 Christians and 2 atheists. And so that's what we're looking at here at the bar below. If anyone wants to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about yourself, go ahead.
My name's Jeremiah. I grew up in Toronto, Canada, into a Jewish believing home where my parents already believed in Jesus before I was born, and I work with Jews for Jesus in New York City.
I'm Roy Montero from California, and have a similar story as Jeremiah. My grandfather on my mom's side is a Polish Jew, Bielasterski. I never knew anything about the Jewish faith, raised Christian, and basically came to know the Lord in a born-again kind of way at age 30.
Thanks, Roy.
Name's Philip, and raised in a secular home with a Jewish father. Became a believer in Jesus at the age of 14. In the last 4 to 6 years, have seriously looked at what it means to be Jewish.
Cool. Philip and I, we hung out together. I think it was this summer. That was a lot of fun.
It was.
Anyone else want to say hello to the viewing audience? Nope. Okay, so I guess we're going to talk about... We can talk about Eldridge and his ridiculous picture. Eldridge, what do you got going on there?
This is just an evil-looking picture of the current Pope, who won't be in office much longer.
Right, the Pope is resigning, and we were just speculating, really, about who the next Pope might be. I actually had a strange dream last night, and I don't claim that my dreams are prophetic or spiritual or anything. I just, these are things I think about, and had a really creepy dream where the new Pope was somehow related to the Antichrist and taking over the world and scary stuff, so yeah. But don't take that with a grain of salt.
It is interesting, though.
It is interesting. A lot of things are lining up, and it's an opportune time to put someone in office in a position of power who will get a lot of people's attention. People are interested. So I don't know. A lot of people are calling for a more liberal Catholic Church, a more modern Catholic Church, and that does seem to, of course, be the trend. So I don't know. I imagine a younger cardinal, someone a little more in tune with the latest generation, might somehow make Catholicism more relevant in both secular media as well as other platforms, and who knows? Who knows? That may be a way in which to gain influence, and I don't know. We're not here to talk about the Catholic Church. I'm obviously not a Catholic. There's no Catholics here in the room to dialogue with, so not something we should spend a whole lot of time talking about, but you do have the picture up there, and, well, it is what it is.
If a
Always...
Jew comes in,
What's that?
we could ask him what he thinks about the Pope getting his seat over there in Israel.
We could talk about that. I looked that up as per your request or whatever. So the Pope was given a seat, whatever that means, over the throne of, or over the tomb of King David, which is bizarre. I mean, and given by the Jewish government, no less. Is this the Jewish government trying to get, support from Rome, or like what? What is the political move? I don't understand it.
Well, the Pope Act, it's not necessarily political. This Pope has been very, he's done a lot of positive things between the relationship between Catholics and in Israel when you look at the history. And any time that an organization that could at one time be considered anti-Semitic, I think turns that direction and does things. And I also think the Pope has said some things in the last couple of days that are very Christian. He's talked about the idea that he's no greater than any other man in the sense of where he finds his salvation. So with all the disagreements we have on theology, most people will agree that the essentials of being a Christian, which is faith, where you put your faith, is why we have a relationship with Jesus. So.
Interesting. I've found this latest pope. Not that I really spend much time, listening to what he has to say or what he's done, but he hasn't done or said anything in particular that have been unchristian in my estimation. Maybe he got saved and that's why he's stepping down.
Well, let's not forget that religion's the biggest divider of all, and the one uniter is faith. That's really nothing. At the end of the day, Jewish or Gentile, we're all going to heaven for the same reason.
I agree with that.
And
Sean?
Did someone say my name, or am I hearing voices?
Yeah, I'm trying to get a word in edgewise. My friend who is Gabrielle over here just entered. So Gabrielle, say hi to Sean, and Sean, say hi to Gabrielle. He's the Jewish young man that I spoke of.
Excellent.
Hello.
Gabriel, welcome to the room. My name's Sean. My Hebrew name is Shaul. And I am a Jewish believer in Jesus. I hope that doesn't put you off willing to dialogue with me.
No, not necessarily. You're not the first one I've talked to.
Okay. Well, cool. Welcome to the room. I'll introduce not everyone quickly, but we've got Jeremiah. You can see his name as you put your mouse over him. He just waved to you. He's also a Jewish believer. He works with Jews for Jesus. Philip Tillman. Philip, what is your relationship with the ministry?
I'm a big supporter, and I believe that it has a prophetic message, and that regardless if you agree with what they do or not, they're presenting. Well, I guess my affiliation is I've done some outreach. Talking with
Okay,
Jews.
but you're not a staff member with Jews for Jesus.
No staff.
Okay, that's understandable.
Yep.
All right, cool.
Bigwigs.
Right. So, Gavriel, I don't want to put you on the spot. It's just you're the only member here in the room who is representative of either the Jewish community or the Jewish secular community. What is your particular?
No, I'm Orthodox. I hate that term, but I'm Orthodox.
Okay. What is there a better term that you'd prefer?
It's the term that everybody knows, but I mean, you say traditional or observant, I guess.
Is that like Chabad or?
No. I don't really affiliate with any group. I'm just.
Do you attend synagogue?
Yeah. Of course.
Okay. Well, you don't need to tell us which, but that's fine. I just wanted to sort of get where you're coming from. I was raised in Chabad. Was anyone else here? Did anyone else here attend Chabad or grow up? No? Okay. I see someone else joined us as well. Mike, sorry for not acknowledging you when you came in. Welcome to the room. And Kyle just joined us as well. Kyle, you are a new face. I've not seen you here before. Want to introduce yourself? Tell us how you found this chat room and what your background is.
I found the chat room because it was posted in the scratch pad, and my background is computer science, mathematics, things of that sort. And
I could have told that just by looking at your glasses.
yeah, new face. Is this some sort of other scratch pad thing whereby you kind of use the scratch pad as like bring like new people over here? Because I don't know, you seem like the new guy. I don't know.
Oh, do you not know who I am? No,
You're
that
Sean,
sounded.
aren't you?
I am Sean, but never mind. That sounded terribly. What is it? Conceited or? You don't know who I am? No.
Oh, at least
No,
200.
I was just. I don't know. I just don't know if maybe I'm not in a Scratchpad hangout. This is a different hangout, but you're inviting Scratchpad members. I don't know.
Well, I don't know what Scratchpad is other than a Facebook group, and I figured...
That's what it is. It's the name of the Facebook group.
Right, so if I'm a member, then I guess this is not an official Scratchpad thing, although I'm a member of Scratchpad and I used it to invite.
Yeah, there's people here like, yeah, there's a lot of people I don't recognize here.
Yeah, Noah Adam was just here, who I believe is the founder of the Scratchpad, but he seems to have gone MIA, so
Indeed.
that's cool. I think I bored him.
Where's Nick? I know Nick.
Okay, so let's pick a topic and run with it. Usually when we do this show, we want to talk about the Jewish world, what's going on in Judaica. That's of particular interest to me, especially given sort of Bible prophecy and world events. And we were just talking about the Pope, and he was sort of establishing relations with the Jewish nation of Israel that were positive. Although, you know, it talks about in Daniel chapter 7, I believe, it talks about the little horn who through peace destroys many, and this false treaty, false peace that he offers between the people of Israel and their enemies. And I'm always skeptical, obviously, because of the Catholic history between the papacy and the Jewish people. It's been one of hostility more than it's been one of of security, peace, and favor. So I say that only to express my skepticism of there being any long-term relationship between the Catholic Church and the Jewish world. Anyways, and so you've got the new Pope, someone coming into office who's an unknown, who may or may not be in favor, pro-Israel. Obviously, every believer in Jesus should be pro-Israel. I'm certainly pro-Israel, and I think everyone here in the room who is a believer in Jesus is pro-Israel as well. Gavriel, I know some Jewish people are not. Like, there's Jewish, you said you don't like Orthodox, but I know some Orthodox Jewish observers who are not.
Carta, yeah.
Yeah. What is your opinion on that?
They're heretics.
Yeah, sure.
No, because listen, these fools, they go and they meet with the president of Iran, and they say, oh, he's such a great person, such a wonderful person, and he's building nuclear bombs to wipe their people off the planet Earth, and, that violates a biblical commandment, not to stand idly by the blood of your brother. And they're sitting there, they're talking with a man who, if he gets his chance, I believe would take it upon himself to murder millions of Jews. So,
do you think it'll ever come to that? What's your understanding of Jewish prophecy?
It's hard. It's really hard to say. It's Do I think there's going to be a war?
Sure.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. And do you see that as being a biblical war, something that something in the Tanakh told us about?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm in agreement too. My first thoughts obviously go to Ezekiel 28, Zechariah 12 through 14, Book of Joel, other places. Eschatology is always fascinating to me. Particularly, one of the reasons I came to faith, if you don't know my background, is I was completely secular. I claimed to be an atheist a couple years ago. I came to believe that the Jewish scriptures were true. And one of the reasons, among many other reasons, was looking at what the Old Testament said concerning the end times, like what the end of the world would look like. And it's all centered around Jerusalem, which is bizarre because Jerusalem, as just a natural resource or a world power, it's ultimately irrelevant. It's not. They don't have. It's not like they've got major oil reserves, and it's not like they've got anything that the world would find interesting, and yet it keeps popping up in the news. It's like the epicenter of world conflict, which is precisely what the Bible said. And what's so fascinating about that is that 70 years ago, Israel, as we have it today, didn't exist. And it didn't exist for 2,000 years. And so all of a sudden we're plunged into a world overnight where these end-time prophecies where before people would laugh at them and say, there's no way Jerusalem will ever be relevant again. The people aren't in the land, and it's not a, it's not a focus at all. Now suddenly it's a major world power. It's a major world. I'm not sure what the word is. It's just it suddenly has the world's attention, and there's so much conflict between the Jewish world and the Middle East, and it's all centered. Everyone's looking right there, and that's exactly what the prophet said would happen. And that's, I mean, how would an atheist respond to that? Is that just self-fulfilling prophecy? Is it coincidence? Like, what is that?
I'm not an atheist, so I can't. If there's an atheist here, I would let him or her speak about it. I really have no idea how they would answer.
I think we do
that.
have an atheist here in the room. I think we have at least 3.
I have no idea.
Show yourselves.
Oh man, that face is creepy. Okay, well, it doesn't look like they want to talk about it. Nope.
I don't know what the question is. I mean,
Sure.
they're a superpower because they have a lot of military power. We back them. There was a lot of drama with the whole forming of the country in the first place, and people are fighting for land, and people
What's
are.
the drama? What drama do you think revolves around them actually being declared a country? Before it was even a country, it was the most heavily populated Jewish place in the world. Well, actually, I should take it back. In a second, I think New York was. To make me correct me.
There's definitely controversy surrounding the establishment of this state, but that's a topic in and of itself.
Yeah.
One worth talking about. I mean, I find the whole situation so unique. There is nothing like Israel on the planet. There's nothing like it.
I agree. I lived there for a little over a year, so I suspect I'm a dual citizen of Israel. So yeah, it's definitely an amazing place, and I wish I had the money to move back. But
Well, we're all going to end up there one day. People always ask me, are you planning to go to Israel? And I always tell them I'll see you there.
have you been?
Nope, not yet.
No. Okay.
Although, if I was I don't know if it's what is the Jewish strain of thought that says all Jewish souls were present at Sinai? Is that something that you believe?
It's a midrash. It's a legend. It's a way of emphasizing some. I know what you're talking about, but I'm not qualified.
It's
to
probably
explain
not
it.
relevant.
A
at all.
Jewish soul is different from a non-Jewish soul. How does that work?
I don't believe that.
I don't believe that either. I don't believe that either. But a lot of people, in fact, the group that sorry, your name again is Sean. You said you were raised in a group called Chabad. They definitely believe that. In fact, they believe. Yeah, they're a very I would consider Chabad to be actually a cult. I would not consider Chabad to be representative of Judaism. I'm sorry if that offends you. Being that's
No,
where
it
you come
doesn't.
from.
I'm not Chabad. I mean, obviously, I was actually kicked out of the synagogue. I was bar mitzvahed there, but I was kicked out of their Hebrew school when I was like 7, 8, something like that, for telling the rabbis that I didn't believe in God. So I've never agreed with Chabad either theologically or religiously.
Chabad has a lot of they read from a book. It was written by a rabbi named Shneur Zalman of Liadi about 200 years ago. It's his own personal take on a lot of things, and they read it as if it were
Scripture.
Right, and it's very, very it's extremely chauvinistic books. They believe that non-Jews, that Gentiles, Goyim are quite literally animals. They don't believe that non-Jews are people in the same way that Jews are people, which is, biblically and from traditional other Jewish groups, that's an absolutely repulsive idea.
Agreed.
I have a question. What do you qualify as a Jewish person? I mean, not a Jewish soul, not that far, but a Jewish person.
Someone who was born of a Jewish mother, or someone who converted properly to Judaism.
Philip, sorry, he's speaking on behalf of Chabad. He's not saying that he believes this. He's just saying this is what Chabad believes.
So
yeah, I'm not
I'm
Chabad.
a Jewish soul if I converted to Judaism.
I mean, if that's what they believe, that's again, that's not what I believe. That's what
Well,
they believe.
What do you believe to be a Jewish person? I was kind of curious. Or would you, not a soul, person?
Okay, so someone is Jew. If your mother is Jewish, you're Jewish. Or if you convert to Judaism properly, you're Jewish.
So my father's Jewish. He's assimilated. You would probably, my mom's not Jewish. You'd say I'm not Jewish then, correct?
No, you're not.
Okay.
For you, it's actually you fall into kind of a different, very small category. It's called Zera Yisrael. It means seed of Israel. It means you're not considered like a full Israelite or Jew, but you have a lineage. Like if you were to convert, they would make it much easier for you.
So what do you actually I mean, for me, I have a question because for me it's interesting because I only can see in history that this is a change in Judaism. This isn't something that's always been believed.
I'm not sorry where you'd get that. That's
Well, how about just the lineage and how it's set up in the Tanakh?
Your status as either a priest or as a Levi, your tribal affiliation passes through the father, but your status as a member of the Jewish people is determined by your mother.
Can you give me any scripture that actually kind of anything from the Torah or anything like that?
Sure. There's a couple places actually. Well, actually, in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, foreign women that were previously married to Jewish men and their children are sent away. They're not included in the community because they're foreign. They're not these women that gave birth to children that happened to have Jewish fathers were not considered Jews. And it's also in.
Can you give me actually some? Can you actually give me something more concrete than just the book?
I can't. Can I cite like an actual passage right off the top of my head? No, off the top of my head I can't. But I can.
You don't have to give it right now, but if Philip is interested, I'm sure that I could forward him the verse if you find it later.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I can definitely look for it.
I would be appreciative of that.
So you would consider me? I have lineage, okay,
right?
But you wouldn't actually agree that, like, let's say my father raised me as a Jewish boy and I got bar mitzvah. Would you consider me a convert at that point?
No, conversion is a very, very tightly controlled process. It's not something you can do on your own. Even it's something. It's a good way to explain this.
What would you actually consider? Let's say my dad just raised me as a traditional Jewish person.
Okay.
When I got bar mitzvah, would you consider me Jewish then?
No. Not at that point. You would have to either have a Jewish mother or you'd have to convert.
Anybody else in the room have any thoughts on this?
Well, it just sounds like conversion sounds almost like what we would call like the ceremony of baptism. You know, a publicly recognized ceremony that one undertakes to demonstrate their transition from one identity to another.
Correct.
Right. Which is understandable. I mean, it's sort of like we don't consider someone a member of the church until they're officially baptized, and so.
I also did First Communion. Did I not get any special stuff for doing that?
You mean like superpowers or something?
Yeah.
Hey, Sean. Did you say that we don't look at people that until they're baptized as a member of the church?
No, I mean, obviously we believe someone's, like, we're talking about the visible church and the invisible church, which is maybe more Augustinian in thought, but it's like,
okay.
We believe there's
I'm with you. No, you're okay.
But let me just explain that for those who are hearing. The invisible church would be those who, through faith, are joined to Messiah by the rebirth of the Spirit, which is something that happens between the person and God at an unknown time. It's known only to the person when they make a profession of faith. But the church does not recognize that as official, nor do they welcome them as a official member until their baptism. At least that's the church that I attend, and most churches that I've come across. Anyone?
Hey, Sean,
Yeah.
we're talking about lineage, and it makes me think of sort of the underlining question, because you could, look, you ask three Jews a question, you get five opinions. So the Jewish community as a whole never has agreed upon who exactly is a Jew, because if you talk to the ultra Orthodox, if you talk to like a Satmar, they don't consider a Reform or a conservative actually Jewish. So everyone has their own.
They consider them Jewish. They consider them heretical Jews, but they don't consider them to be non-Jews.
Well, it's like in their eyes as if they weren't, because they're not as halakha as they are. But my point is that the whole issue behind the lineage of the Jewish people is the question why. Why did God even make a people called the Hebrews or the Israelites or the Jewish people? And I think the answer to that question is even sort of less talked about in the Jewish community, but it's I think it's certainly an important one.
There's a rabbi, a Reformed rabbi, Carol Harris. Anyway, she wrote a more of an ethnographic a book, and it was more about Messianic Judaism. But one of the things that she said in it was that until recently, Orthodox Jews did not look at Reformed people or Reformed Jews as Jewish people. That they've maybe changed their views on it in the last 30 years because of assimilation. So my question, I guess, on that is, do you would say that a reform believer is Jewish, but you would say you probably don't agree with their theology, correct? What they actually believe.
Like a Reform person, the Reform movement. To put this in perspective, the Reform movement, first of all, in the grand scheme of things, if you're talking about Jewish history, you're talking about 4,000 years.
Okay, I'm with
the
you.
The Reform movement is it's about 200 years old, if that. And the whole basis of this movement, when it was founded in Germany, was to make the Jewish religion seem as least foreign as possible to the surrounding Protestant culture in Germany. They did away with all of the dietary laws. They changed the day. They changed the date Shabbat from Saturday to Sunday. They stopped a lot of the holidays. They gave up as well. They introduced organ music. This whole Reform movement is based on the idea that you can pick and choose, and that basically you can be an atheist and be a member in good standing of the Reform movement. It's very non-dogmatic, but in that regard, we consider them to be, like, if they're born of Jewish mothers, but again, like you said, their theology isn't correct, so they would be Jewish, but we would consider them Jewish heretics.
What is the status of a Jewish heretic in relation to God? Like, do you view heretics as lost, as a Protestant would?
Right. Yeah, they get a penalty in Jewish law. There's a term called karet. It means cut off.
Sort of like what it says in Isaiah 53. Uses the same term. Daniel 9 as well. I'm sort of trying to provoke you to talk about messianic prophecy, but
yeah, that's I'm not going to have that discussion with you. I'm very sorry. I've had it thousands of times.
Yeah, we've had it here a few times too.
Again, like I lived. Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, and this is the question I always pose to kind of Orthodox or traditional, or I would just say more conservative Jews, if that's fair. Mm-hmm. My question is we look at we have different viewpoints on what the Messiah is, and I think everybody in here that realizes that that's fine. I mean, Jewish people have had different viewpoints of who the Messiah is for a very long time. And Talmud's very clear, kind of the different interactions you see in it. But how do you actually yourself actually what do you actually I'm not looking for you to refute the claim of Jesus. I'm more looking for what signs are you looking for the Messiah?
It's an entirely different shift in paradigm. It's not
the thought process doesn't change. I understand that.
Huh?
I understand the thought process is different for you than it is for me.
It's very, very different. It's again, I'm not an authority on Christianity, but you take you believe in a concept called faith, right? You believe that if you believe in this guy Jesus, that you will be saved. You believe that he's the Messiah, right? You believe in this person, basically.
Well, I would actually go as far to tell you that I believe in God. Now, there's different names of God and so on and so forth that we can talk about, but
Right.
I'm not looking to talk about necessarily what I believe, because that sounds like you already kind of know. So I'm actually trying to understand your paradigm from your perspective. I'm trying to see it through your eyes.
Okay, well, that was the point in my asking the question. You believe that Jesus is the Messiah, right?
I believe that he's, and I'd put that in there, not just the Messiah, but God himself. But I know that's a whole conversation within itself.
Right. Okay, so you believe he's the Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
The difference, in more ways than one, between your perspective and the traditional Jewish perspective is that we see it, the Messiah, it's an absence of belief. If the Messiah were to come today and we would see the Messianic age ushered in, it would not require belief. We would be living in a world in which there would be no war, in which there would be peace, there would be universal knowledge of God. It would be as plain and simple as seeing the sun coming up every morning. No one challenges the fact that the sun comes up because they can see it. It would not require belief.
So your description in my context of things is a very clear, disdain image of God, and in that I would ask you if that's really biblically. I believe it's there as well, but if we've ever seen that before, other than maybe Adam and Eve, how do you actually show
like a perfected world?
What was that?
Like, have we ever seen a perfected world?
After sin entered the world, which is, I would say is turning your back on God. When have we ever seen that? When have we ever seen an example of what universal peace looks like?
No. He's trying to say, like, the Jewish Messiah is essentially a utopia, including epistemological utopia, where skepticism isn't really a problem anymore. That would be one of the problems that's gone in this grand Jewish utopia, and they call that the Messiah, if I interpreted
the Messianic age, yeah.
I had to sort of step out of the conversation for a second. Gabrielle, do you know a guy named Tuvia Zaretsky? No, not Zaretsky.
Yeah, I had a running YouTube debate with him for a while.
Okay, cool. If you ever want to have a live discussion with him in this Google Hangout format, we could totally set that up.
I used to look. I'm not trying to be offensive. I was invited here. As far as like debates and discussions with Messianic Jews and Jews for Jesus and other groups, whether you want to call them missionaries or whatever, I've done it. If I've done it once, I've done it 1,000 times, and I'm just not going to do it anymore. I'm not going to change your opinion. You're not going to change mine.
But
okay?
do you find this discussion to be interesting or fruitful to you? Like right now, are you feeling like this is a waste of time, or are you enjoying yourself?
No, I mean, it's neither. I'm just kind of here.
Okay, cool. And we're happy to have you here. I didn't want to interrupt the discussion. I did want to throw in a scripture. Cool. So we're talking about expectations of the Messiah, and I actually really appreciated what Kyle just said, which is the idea of an epistemological revelation, that when the Messiah comes, there won't be any doubt, and so you're sort of waiting for that event to take place to finally acknowledge who the Messiah is. But I want to form my messianic expectation based on, obviously what the Tanakh says. Like, does the Tanakh ever say that there will be an epistemological ambiguity about who the Messiah will be, that there'll be a period of time where it's not so clear, even though some people will get it and some people won't?
Because I'm not entirely sure what the question is, honestly.
Basically, I'm asking, is it possible, or is it indicated anywhere in Tanakh that the Messiah's appearing will be present, and yet not everyone will either believe he is the Messiah, or not everyone will be in right relationship to him? Because you make it sound like he appears and suddenly the world is perfect and everyone is in right relationship with God and everyone...
No. So there's the Messiah as an individual, a person, and then there's the Messianic age. The prophecies I'm speaking about involving, the Messianic age, this peace, knowledge of God, and end of war. The Messiah himself is never is very rare. In fact, on one or two occasions, is explicitly mentioned in these prophecies. Why is that? Because in the grand scheme of things, the person of the Messiah is not that significant. The age that he will usher in will be.
Okay, well, I want to read a verse, and actually I'll bring it up on the screen, and maybe we can discuss that.
Okay.
Cool. Here it is. Hosea 3:5 says, "Afterward," and obviously afterward indicating after a period of time, "shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, and fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days." It talks about sort of this end-time scenario. Let me get it off the screen.
Right.
This end-time scenario where the Jewish people return, which means they must in some sense be away. They return to the Lord and David their king, which I assume we both acknowledge being the son of David, the Messiah, right?
Right.
Okay, so there must be a period in time in which, in order to, obviously God never goes away.
Right.
Right, he's always present. But they return and seek the Lord their God, though he was never absent. It was they, the people, who were absent, and David their king. So
Right.
it seems odd to say that God was present, but David their king was absent, if David their king was absent, not present. Do you sort of see what I'm indicating or trying to...
Well, no, the belief is that the Messiah will be a descendant of David and that his throne will be established in the Messianic age forever. Like the Jewish people, in an ideal state, the Jewish people will have 3 or 4 things that we currently don't have now. One of them is a king.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is a temple in Jerusalem. Not I mean like a local, like a synagogue or whatever they call it, but like the temple in Jerusalem.
Right.
We'll have what's called a Sanhedrin. I don't know if you know what that is. Kind of like the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
It's the Mosaic court. And we'll also have the gift of prophecy.
Okay.
These are things, we live in an unperfected state because of the exile, because of our sinfulness. We're not even entirely, even most rabbis today will tell you that even though we have the state of Israel, it's a Jewish state in that the majority of people who live there are Jews, but in a religious sense, it's not. It's a secular democracy.
Right.
So even while you're in the land of Israel, you're still in a way considered to be sort of in exile, because we don't have this perfected state. And
Sure.
so no, it's returning. At the end of days, everything will be put right. So that's what the returning to God is. Or at least that's how we see it.
And I think we'd agree with you to a great extent. The verse that I just read, 2 verses before, it says, this is Hosea 3:4. I can pull that up on the screen as well. It says that for the Israelites will live many days without a king or prince, without sacrifice or sacred stones, without ephod or idol, and then the next one. And afterward the Israelites will return and seek the Lord their God and David their king. So it seems to me, that it's obviously not a good thing that they're going without a king and without the sacrifices and without all those things that the Jewish people long for and, pray every day to have returned to them.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end days, it says, they will return to the Lord and David their king. Now, I assume that this restoration of Israel to the Lord and David their king is the restitution of the Jewish people to all of those things that it just mentioned that they didn't have. So you would agree with that the introduction of the Davidic Messianic king, as well as the Davidic age, is the reintroduction of all of those things that Israel once had and was lost.
Yeah, I would agree.
Right. Right, and so it seems to me, at least, that this David their king, which I'll show you a few other verses that I have in mind, seems to himself be, in his own person, the fulfillment of the sacrifices and the priesthood and the royal. It's sort of like the amalgamation of the prophet, the priest, and the king all into a singular person.
Yeah, I would not agree with that, but that's no. I mean, there's a prophecy early on in the Torah. Again, I'm not. Look, Scripture letter and verse numbering is not something I'm really that familiar with. That's really kind of a Christian concept in and of itself. I don't really read it with verse numbers, so I'm not entirely sure where these different things might be. But it said that the scepter
Will
The
not depart
kings-
from Judah until Shiloh
Yes.
comes. That's Genesis chapter
Yes.
49, I believe.
Right. Yes. Right. So we see that we return to David, their king. God promised that we would have a king, that we would have the people would have a king. So
What is your understanding of this, the word scepter in that prophecy?
it's a euphemism for the kingship.
Right, and so it says the scepter will not depart from Judah until Shiloh comes, and to him will be the obedience of the nations. And so I've always interpreted that verse, Shiloh being like the rulership, the king in Israel. Once God established the royal line or the kingship,
Davidic line.
the Davidic line, right? That whole system, in a sense, ceased for the last 2,000 years, did it not?
No, it ceased before then. It ceased during the Babylonian times. Yeah.
Right, and so you don't see that as being you see that prophecy more to do with. I'm just trying to understand. That prophecy then has to do with the setting up of the Davidic kingdom in the end times, or could it possibly mean of the scepter departing all those many years ago? Could the prophecy mean that?
It could just as easily mean both. The reality is, look, we're promised a king, and in the end of days, we're also promised a king. It's the scepter shall not depart from Judah, which is tribe, obviously.
I mention that only because if the scepter departed from Judah, or the prophecy is odd because we know that the Davidic king will be from the tribe of Judah and will rule and reign forever. And so when it says the scepter will not depart from Judah until Shiloh comes, that almost seems like I don't want to say a contradiction. I don't believe it is a contradiction.
Let me look it up real quick. You'll have to forgive me. I'm very tired, and I'm also trying. While we're talking, I'm also doing work from my home office. So
that's cool. Anyways, the reason I bring it up is because I've heard Christians use this as an argument in favor of the messianic claims of Jesus, because just like if one understands the scepter as being the right to rule or govern their own people, you mentioned that, yes, when the Jews went into exile, that did bring an end to the Davidic royal line over.
The Davidic royal line went out of existence before then, before the Roman exile, before in the year 70 of the current era when the temple was destroyed. It was a number of centuries before then, actually.
Right. Okay. I'd actually, because I haven't thought on this prophecy in a while, I'm probably going to, in my own private study, look into that a little more, because it's giving us a time. It's telling us when this happens, when the scepter departs, which if we can actually pin that down to a specific time in history, that may better help us to identify the Messiah, or maybe it's still yet future, as you first indicated. So we'll put that on the side for now. I just wanted to address some of the newer faces in the room who we haven't spoken to. I see Nathan, welcome back. And there's someone here named Israel. Israel, you haven't said anything. And
Hey.
Jimmy, how you doing?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
All right, cool.
How did you stumble upon this hangout?
I got an email from you.
Like me personally?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So I clicked on it and it came here.
All right. Do I know you, or do you know me?
No. No
Wow,
problem.
that's amazing. All right.
Israel, Sean, Israel.
Well, nice to meet you. What is your background in terms of your faith or religious upbringing?
I'm a Christian.
Okay.
I believe that Jesus is God. He's Lord, King over all.
All right. And Jimmy?
How you doing?
Hey, good. And your background, sir?
Lukewarm Christian all my life. Been going down for about a year. Still struggling sometimes, whether it's being angry or drinking alcohol.
Having a hard time hearing you, Jimmy. Might want to boost your mic or.
All right, hang on. How about this? Does it sound okay now?
That sounds better. Yeah.
Okay. Been a lukewarm Christian all my life, like I said. Been born again maybe within a year. Um, try and stay in the Word. Try and stay in fellowship. Try not to live the things of this world, but the things in heaven.
Gotcha. Love not the things in the world. Got it. Okay, cool. Well, welcome to the room. Thanks, Israel and Jimmy, for being here. Nathan, how have you been?
I've been well. Yeah, I guess my time was a little off, so I missed half of it. But yeah, good to see you guys again.
Yeah, nice of you to be here. Cool. All right. What were we just talking about? Okay, I want to move on past the Genesis prophecy, but why did we bring that up? That's more interesting to me.
I have no idea.
I think the issue I was asking, I think the real question I was asking is kind of a perspective of what they actually, or a traditional Jewish person would actually expect. You know, what signs they'll have when the Messiah comes. And he answered my question, I think, pretty well. I think I definitely have a lot more questions along those lines. I think it's interesting because typically traditional Jews and I use the word conservative Christians have a lot more in common than uncommon. You'd probably agree with that too, correct?
Do I agree with it?
Yeah, I mean, not we don't necessarily agree on everything, but we agree on quite a bit about the world, state of the world, state of Israel.
It depends. It would depend. I mean, like as a general rule, I'd say yeah, but you have to understand that neither groups are entirely what I would, are monolithic. So
Yeah, well, isn't that true? So I guess the reason I ask this type of questions too is, being a person that does believe the Messiah has already come, being able to also empathize with you and understand why you believe he hasn't come sometimes can be helpful as well. Not necessarily a debate, more of a dialogue, a civil dialogue.
Right. Yeah, like I said, my debating days are done.
I mean, debates don't usually go anywhere. Dialogues can make you think, and they can make you have to actually go back and check what you believe. And I don't think there's anything wrong with checking what you believe.
No, in fact, I'm already Googling this Genesis prophecy, which I think it was like 5 years ago. It really fascinated me. I spent a good deal of time looking into like different commentaries and what it says, because it's the only place where the word, at least as far as I remember, where the word Shiloh as a title is used, which is unique. I wanted to find out more about what that meant.
Shiloh is in the in-between place between Christians, would typically use Shiloh as a in-between place of heaven and earth and heaven.
You're talking about Sheol?
Yeah, that's Sheol. That's different. Okay. That's different.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a euphemism for the grave.
Right.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, different word.
Okay. Just a little bit.
So yeah, it's Genesis 49 verse 10. I know I said I wanted to move on beyond it, but I'm reading it. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come. That's a different translation, obviously. And the obedience of the nations shall be his. Yeah, obviously it's a messianic expectation, because it talks about how, obviously, Daniel chapter 7, the Son of Man coming on the clouds, whom all of the nations pay tribute to, or other translations say worship, or other translations say obey. You see it again in Isaiah 9:6, where the child who is born rules on David's throne, and the nations obey his law, and he upholds the government eternally, all that sort of stuff. So definitely a messianic prophecy.
Agreed.
But I guess, Gabriel, my familiarity with prophecy leads me to believe that the Messiah had to come 2,000 years ago. Like, I'm thinking of Daniel chapter 9. Are you familiar with chapter 9?
Yeah.
Yeah, it talks about the Messiah coming before the destruction of the Second Temple and being, as the word we used earlier, cut off. I mean, I could pull it up on the screen, but I just assume your familiarity with it.
I understand the familiarity with it, but I don't understand why you understand that that means the Messiah has to come before the second temple.
Oh, just because it says that, know this, that until you go to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the Messiah comes, it gives the dates, and then it says Messiah is cut off, and then it says the temple is destroyed. So if your expectation is the Messiah comes and sets up the eternal kingdom and builds the third temple, or at least that's what I've heard from other Jewish sources based on like Ezekiel's prophecies, why does Daniel say the Messiah is going to come and then the temple will be destroyed? That must be talking about the second temple, not the third one.
Give me a second to read it.
Yeah, sure. I can put it up on the screen if that would help.
Oh, it's okay. I've got it here.
All right. And this is also in context. I like what you said earlier, that it's more of a Christian tradition to proof text and take a verse out of context and just read a single verse, as opposed to reading the whole context. And as you know, Daniel is writing in Babylon. This is before the second temple, and so when God's saying, Daniel's praying to God throughout the book of Daniel, saying, when can we return to the land and rebuild the temple? God finally gives him an answer and says, okay, here's from the issuing of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. That's verse number, Daniel chapter 9, verse 24 through 26. He lays it out. He says, from the decree given, which was given to Nehemiah in the book of Nehemiah in 444 BC, he says 483 years from then, this, that, and the other thing's going to happen. So all of these things had to have happened 2,000 years ago. The Messiah had to come. He had to be cut off and usher in the final atonement for sins. That's verse number 24, and it's all in front of you.
Yeah, I have... I'm going to try and find here. I see what you're talking about. I'm going to try and forgive my technological ignorance that's going to delay this a minute.
No pressure of time whatsoever. We're just hanging out.
And Sean, I just want to acknowledge Gabrielle here for being a good sport about this. I kind of sort of told him what we were doing here, but not really. So he didn't know what he was getting into. So I just want to acknowledge him and give him kudos for stepping up to the plate the way he did. So
I give him the same kudos. In fact, we didn't even know what we were talking about either. So we didn't know what we were getting into. All the same. We're sort of winging it, as I said when we started this.
Yeah, this is great. We should find more people who would be willing to jump in as Gav did and of the Jewish faith because this is extremely interesting.
I would love that. I want more people of various backgrounds and different ways of approaching the text, because otherwise it's just hearing myself, one hand clapping, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'll definitely see what I can do because I'm interested too, based on my extremely limited knowledge of my own background. So,
right.
I'm my mom's a Holocaust survivor, so I want to know what that was all about too. So. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I'm very interested. So
I don't think that's something that we're going to discuss today.
My grandmother's a Holocaust survivor, and my mother is a Chernobyl survivor.
Oh wow!
The nuclear reactor explosion in the Ukraine.
Totally remember that.
Yeah, it was a few years before I was born, so I don't.
No, Gabrielle, if you don't find anything immediately, we can just carry on the conversation, and maybe we could talk about it some other time. But
I've got it.
Oh, okay.
I'll put it in the chat box.
Oh, okay. You can also do screen share if you want to bring up whatever it is you're looking at.
I have no idea how to do that.
You did mention anyways, yeah, on the left side of the Google Hangout, you'll see it says like invite people, chat, screen share, and other things. When you click screen share, it shows you the different tabs that you have open on your screen, and then any one you click will actually show up on your camera feed. So
okay,
that's how I've been bringing up verses.
This one.
All right.
Sorry if that's a bit lengthy.
You got it. I noticed you put the Hebrew in as well. Is there a reason for that?
It just shows it superimposed next to the English. I'm assuming you can read it. So.
I can read Hebrew, but it doesn't mean I understand what I'm reading. Like I can pronounce it. That's about it.
All right. Well, it's not so important to read the Hebrew, but the commentary under the exact passage.
Oh, I see.
Right. I'm gonna let you read over that for a minute. I actually have to make a very brief phone call. My mother's expecting
All right, I'll read it
She's
to
been
the
in the
room.
hospital, so okay.
Okay, thanks, Gabriel, and we can pray if you want prayer. All right, let's. So the verse is posted. This is Daniel 9 verse 24. So 70 weeks of years. So 70 weeks of years. It's 70 weeks of years would be 70 times 7. That's 490 years. Has been decreed upon your people and upon the city of your sanctuary, the city of your sanctuary being Jerusalem, to terminate the transgression and to end sin, to expiate iniquity, to bring eternal righteousness and to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the Holy of Holies. So that's the verse, and then I believe the commentary is below. So it says, 70 weeks of years have been decreed on Jerusalem from the day of the first destruction in the days of Zedekiah until it will be destroyed the second time to terminate the transgression and to end sin. So the second termination, I assume, is referring to the second destruction of the second temple. I mean, obviously it's the first destruction of the second temple, but that would be the second destruction. So that Israel should receive their complete retribution in the exile of Titus and his subjugation, in order that their transgression should terminate, their sins should end, and their iniquities should be expiated, in order to bring upon them eternal righteousness and to anoint upon them the Holy of Holies, the ark, the altars, the holy vessels, which they will bring to them through the King Messiah. The number of sevens is 490 years, which is also my calculation, right? The Babylonian exile was 70 years, and the Second Temple stood for 420 years. Okay, so actually this seems to support my interpretation. So we both agree with the dating, 490 years from the decree. What I find confusing here is it says that the temple was destroyed so that, read this, it says that the temple was destroyed in order, I'm quoting from whatever source we were given here, in order that the transgression should terminate, their sins should end, and their iniquities should be expiated, in order to bring upon them eternal righteousness. So what it's saying is that God destroyed the second temple to make the Jewish people righteous forever. So as if the temple's destruction is an act of atonement. And yet, there's two things I want to say about it. Number one, why would God scatter the Jewish people, take away their temple, take away all those things that they need in order to maintain their relationship with God, in order to make them righteous, when the very opposite is made clear from that verse in Hosea, which says the Jewish people will go many days without a temple and a sacrifice and all those things, and in the end days they will seek the Lord their God, meaning they were not in right relationship. So how can the destruction of the temple make the Jewish people right, when it's the returning to God in the end times, which didn't happen for 2,000 years, which is the return? It seems to me that if the destruction of this temple brought about the righteousness of the Jewish people, it would surely bring about a right relationship with God. I mean, what else is righteousness if not in right standing with God, when it did the exact opposite? It was the scattering of the people. It was their dispersal. So that seems to be a contradiction of the plain reading of both what Daniel was saying, as well as just the history of the Jewish people. More so, it just seems counterintuitive. Like, why would... does anyone see what I'm saying?
I follow. I think it's only a question somebody that doesn't believe would have to answer.
Yeah, I guess. I don't want to speak on behalf of Gabrielle. It just seems odd. More likely, at least the plain reading of the text seems to be... Obviously, Messiah is involved in this. This text even says at the bottom of the commentary, it says, and they will bring, which they will bring to them through King Messiah. So obviously King Messiah is involved in this whole process, and he's mentioned in Daniel 9:24 through 26 no less than 3 times. So,
well, I kind of find it interesting that he didn't distinguish when I asked him the question of what is the Messiah going to look like, what's going to look, that he kind of talked about more of a Messiah ben David type Messiah, but he kind of stayed away from the Messiah ben Joseph, which is very clearly talked about throughout Jewish literature. So I don't know.
And to the uninitiated, that means the glorious, triumphant Messiah versus the suffering and defeated Messiah.
So, I mean, and I don't want to speak for him, but
right.
It's very hard when you don't necessarily know what the other person believes, because you know, a lot of what they believe too is interpretation, just like what we believe. We typically interpret it with the thought process behind it.
Well, I'd also point out that I think he mentioned that he was not familiar with Tanakh as, at least, did anyone else get that impression that his messianic expectation was not entirely formed by Tanakh or messianic prophecy? He said that was more of a Christian thing to do.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's sort of bizarre.
Yeah, it helps sometimes to understand kind of how they're forming
their expectation.
Yeah, I mean, we typically conclude with what we believe by whatever we've observed and thought process. So, you know, it's very hard to distinguish if you don't necessarily know what expectations they have for the Messiah.
I'm reading at the end of this commentary, so it reckons the amount of years. It says the Babylonian exile was 70 years, and the Second Temple stood for 420 years. That's 490 years, which fits very well. You know, obviously the 77s. It's talking about, you know, when this whole thing will be completed. And it says that this whole event brings about the end of sin, the expiation of iniquity, which I assume means atonement, and to bring in eternal righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy and anoint the Holy of Holies. How was the destruction of the Second Temple the bringing in of eternal righteousness? As in, like, it's done.
Well, there's no need for the temple anymore? Is that what you're going for?
Well, I'm just reading what the verse says as literally as I can. It says that the culmination...
The verse is saying there's no need for the temple anymore.
Right. Why? Like, what happened?
Anybody? Bueller?
Yeah, Bueller. I mean, and what does it have to do with the Messiah? Because the Messiah is mixed in with this. He's mixed in there 3 times.
I mean, I'm with you. I think it's interesting when you look at just how things correlate. I mean, once again, I want to understand anybody that has a different opinion on this, their paradigm of how they draw the conclusion, you know.
Well, for the viewing audience, I mean, as believers in Yeshua, believers in Jesus, we obviously believe that his death brought about the final atonement. That the temple, you know, was basically what it stood for in Jerusalem, was the means by which the priesthood would administer the mission, you know, to atone for sin, for people to come before God and have whatever their barrier was removed. But for whatever reason, God deemed it necessary to remove that temple and clearly bring in everlasting righteousness and make an end of sin. But the question is, what was it, the destroying of the temple itself which atoned for sin? Well, that sort of seems counterintuitive. It was the temple where these things were done. Why would the removing of the... Why even make the temple in the first place if the removing of it is... Anyway, it's sort of bizarre.
He may have destroyed a physical temple, but, you know, if you believe in Jesus, you actually believe the temple moved.
Well, right, because the temple is where, obviously, God's presence on earth, you know, the glory of his presence in the first temple, it was said that he dwelt in the temple. And so, you know, Yeshua would often talk about his own body being the temple, the new temple. And so, you know, he would say, destroy this body, destroy this temple, and I'll raise it up in 3 days. He used that language. And so,
He also talks about himself really clearly about what that new temple is going to look like is your heart, you know, the replacement of your heart.
I have a question for you, Sean.
Sure.
I just want to be clear on this, so I want to make sure. The third temple that will be built, which is, you know, you can't stop Bible prophecy, is that for the Orthodox Jews, for the coming of their Messiah? I mean, I'm not trying to insult anyone. Is that what?
No, it's not insulting at all. That's biblical. So Ezekiel predicts another temple will be built in Jerusalem, and most of the religious Jewish world is looking forward to the building of the next temple. Plans are already being made, and it's a very common belief that whoever builds that temple is, in fact, the Messiah. Now, Jesus commented, he said, I come in my Father's name, and you will not receive me, but another will come in his own name, him you will receive. He's speaking to the Jewish people.
Okay.
So, it seems...
Go ahead. I just want to make sure on that, because I know that the end times are here, and I understand when that temple is built, and it's going to be the Antichrist coming out, stepping out, and claiming to be God. I know all that. I just want to make sure I understand that the third temple is for the Messiah, for the Orthodox Jew. That's all. I understand the majority of the Bible prophecy, and
right.
And I get it. But there's some things that still need to be cleared on, little things.
You want to know if it's the Orthodox Jews who are going to claim ownership of the temple, or do I misunderstand your question?
Yes. It's the Orthodox Jews who are going to claim the temple.
Are the Jewish leaders in Israel considered Orthodox?
Well, which leaders?
Yeah, or the religious leaders.
Well,
religious leaders. I mean, they're ultra Orthodox, correct? Anybody?
I assume so.
Well, all branch of nations are corrupt. Even Israel, America, they're all corrupt.
Yeah. Well, they're not just corrupt. We're corrupt.
Yes. But yeah, I'm just curious about the Orthodox Jews and when the temple and they're going to basically claim to be theirs or whatever. Or, I don't know.
Well, it's very likely. I would say it's very likely that you're going to see a broad assortment of a lot of different people claim that the false prophet will be their prophet. I mean, Revelations very much spells it out that a lot of people are going to follow this prophet. So,
I noticed that Obama is going to Israel and they're thinking about a peace treaty, and they're calling this peace treaty military term Operation Operation. I'm sorry, I can't remember what it is. I had a point I was making. I'm sorry. I have to find it real quick.
That's okay. But yes, the Bible does talk about, I mean, if you only want to talk Tanakh, Old Testament, it does talk about this one who comes, I'm thinking Daniel specifically. Zechariah talks about him as the false shepherd, or the idol shepherd.
Daniel 8? Daniel 8 or 9?
Daniel 7, 8, and I'm not sure.
9 is definitely about the Messiah.
Right.
No, 8, 7 and 8.
But then as you go into 10 and 11 of Daniel, it brings him up again, the little horn, and he's got other names as well. It talks about the one who brings this false peace, this one who breaks the treaty, the one who deceives the nations by peace destroys many. I think that's Daniel chapter. Let me look this up.
We also have to recognize that Jesus looked at as Jesus' appearance will, if you look at Revelations, I forget where exactly it's at. I think it's actually Revelations 1. John talks very clearly that he sees a lamb that has been crucified standing there. It could be metaphorically speaking, but he has 6 horns and 6 eyes. Isn't that correct?
Are you talking about the beast of Revelation, or?
No, but Jesus' return and what he looks like, metaphorically, possibly. We can talk about it, how it says. Let me pull it up.
I think you're looking somewhere around Daniel 11, maybe 36 and on. Sean, I think is what you're looking at.
I'm actually looking at Daniel 8:25, but
okay.
What verse are you looking at?
37. He'll show no regard for gods of his fathers, nor for the desired by women, nor will he regard any god, but will exalt himself above them all.
Yeah, that sounds very much like what we read later in Thessalonians, the description of the one that we call the Antichrist, or the Old Testament calls the little horn, or the there's he has a few titles from the Old Testament or the Tanakh, which are indicative of this one who's meant to come, who's meant to be this enemy of the Jewish people, who has yet to arise. Like it's still yet future, which needs to be worked into. Whatever whatever background you come from, whatever theology you have, the view of the messianic future of the world must also incorporate what Daniel and the prophets said, which is this extreme enemy of the Jewish people also rising to power. And so I like the view that Messiah is going to come and set up a kingdom. That's certainly scriptural. But before that happens, there's got to be this false person, whoever this is, who comes to a position of incredible power, who persecutes the Jewish people. And in the Tanakh we read of a time in the book of Joel called the time of Jacob's trouble. A time where, and we see it also in Zechariah 12, where the Jewish people, it says 2/3 of the land are cut off. And then there's this final war. So,
Hi there, everybody.
Hi there, welcome. I see some other people are joining with us. Brian, have you been here before?
No, Trank. Sean Trank gave me the link, told me I should come in and check you guys out.
Cool. Sean Trank, that guy that's sitting right behind me?
Oh, nice. I've been talking to him for a while. He came across my YouTube page a long time ago and asked me to review The Awakening, and gave me the...
Well, nice to have you with us. What is your... obviously, Sean didn't tell me about you, so what is your particular religious background?
Well, I'm a Gentile. I'm a Christian, and I am not... Without getting too into detail, I have this love for the Jews and Israel placed on my heart, and the Lord is showing me all kinds of current events manifesting in the prophecies manifesting in current events, and I'm dreaming dreams and having visions like Paul wrote and Joel wrote, and I have been given this understanding of scriptures, and I have this thing about the Catholic Church laid on my heart, and
what thing, if I can ask?
About this Pope, and you know, I started to get into Christian ministry. Keeps muting me. But anyways, I got into Christian ministry. I went to Palm Beach Atlantic University for a while, and the Lord had showed me that the churches, the buildings, aren't necessarily His house anymore. And I woke up...
New Testament theology would agree with that. We would say that the house of God would be the heart that He dwells.
Well, long story short, I ain't even trying to come in here and like take over the show. I'm just saying the Lord has showed me that the book of Revelation chapter 17, I woke up sitting straight up one night with a picture in my head of a crucifix laying upside down on the table. I don't know who keeps muting me, but anyways, and he told me to read Revelation 17, and he showed me that the whore is the Vatican, and the Vatican City is Babylon that sits on the 7 hills. And I've been seeing a disturbing trend of people trying to claim America as Babylon, which removes the attention of the importance of Israel being the true Jews. And they're trying to say that they're the synagogue of Satan, that they're not really the Jews. You got people calling the Christian church the bride, which Israel's the bride. John 3 says that we're the friend of the bridegroom who hears his voice and rejoices.
Gotcha. I think that we are the bride. And I'm actually about to go get some tacos, so I'm going to have to leave y'all. But I was just going to read something in 2 Timothy chapter 3 that it says, "This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of themselves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers," and it goes on and on and on. The more that I read this, I realize that I can't think of a time nowadays that none of these aren't. I mean, all these are true that's going on. People are blasphemers. They are disobedient. They're unthankful, unholy, despisers of those that are good. Being good is uncool. I mean, it's not a good thing.
Well, the Baptist Church is trying to tell people that, you know, we're not in the end times. People have been thinking we're in the end times for centuries, but you have to get the count right on Israel. There's over 120 some prophecies that have been fulfilled since 1948 and on, and the count is correct now. And like you said,
are you talking about dispensationalism and covenantal theology?
I'm talking about them being returned back to their land, the Hebrew language being restored, the Hebrew currency being restored. You know, in Obadiah, it talks about them being small, surrounded by enemies, and being despised and being blessed, the land being reproduced to the fruit from a desert.
Yep.
You know, the whole shot. And all I'm saying is I've come across these writings from Alberto Rivera, who used to be a Jesuit priest real high up in the Vatican. And he came across a real King James Bible and started reading it and realized that the Catholic Bible was taking from and adding to, like Revelation 22:18-19 says. And he started studying it and got out of the Catholic Church and exposed some of the things he learned in the meetings that he had with the higher uppers. And basically he's claiming that the Catholic Church created Islam back in the 400, 500, 600s to take Jerusalem. And to kill.
I've heard things like that.
Yeah, and if you consider that to be truth, then you go to Ezekiel 22 and read that with that in mind, and it opens up the prophet of Ezekiel's words very, very clearly with that in mind.
Are you actually making the proposition that you think we are in the end times beyond what Jesus was talking about?
I think that we are not in the last days. I think we're literally within the last hours.
So my thinking about this, though, is that you realize that you could be wrong, right?
What's that?
You are willing to admit that you could be wrong, correct?
That I could be wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, nobody knows the day or the hour.
Okay.
Not even the angels nor the
But we
sun.
will know the season.
Yeah. Well.
But I do know that Jesus said that when my people are returned, that this generation shall not pass. And Psalm 91 says a generation is either 70, 70 plus 10, or 80 years, which would be 70
I
to
think that's
80
taken
years.
out of context. When he said that was right before the Mount of Transfiguration, and that's saying that this generation will not pass. He's talking to the disciples about his glory being shown.
A lot of people interpret it that way. You're right.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Well, and let's also be careful of looking at a Western view of things opposed to a worldly view of things.
I'm just more interested, Brian. You mentioned that you're having dreams and visions and whatnot, and I don't want to cast. I mean, we're told to test the spirits and whatnot.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I don't want to be skeptical to the point of not believing that you're having a legitimate experience, but I'm curious, what is your feeling on what's going on with the Pope right now? I mean, do you have an expectation that the next Pope that comes into power will be...
Somebody was talking about Daniel 11, and that's been laid on my heart real heavy. The further you go down in Daniel 11, it talks about the Antichrist, if you will, going after Libya, going after Egypt. Not even Egypt will escape, and that Assyria is on his doorstep. But he will be troubled by tidings out of the east and out of the north. And if you consider Russia and China and their opposition, especially Russia and Syria, then you understand that it could very well be Barack Obama. And I'm not putting that in stone. You got to consider Isaiah 17 says, that Damascus will stand throughout all the ages of man until the end. And in the end, Damascus will become a ruinous heap. That is being fulfilled. Jeremiah 49 basically lays out all these wars that NATO and the U.S.
But there's been wars before, and there's been just as much as brutality has been taking place.
But the counts are correct on Israel. Now, if you look at what Jesus says in Luke 21:20, he says, "When ye shall see Jerusalem compassed by armies, know that the desolation thereof, spoken of by the prophet Daniel, is nigh." Well, if you take Barack Obama being the first black president, who's half Jewish, half Muslim,
We
I
don't
believe
know.
is a-
Well, hold on real fast. There's a lot of issues I have with this, and one of the issues I have with this is
Damascus
it gets hard is
Damascus
talk about this stuff. There has to be a relation that we don't know what it is. We've got a lot of conspiracy theories.
I'm not claiming to
We don't know if he's a
I'm
Muslim.
just telling you what the Lord has laid on my heart. I mean, I was asked a question. I didn't even get to the Pope, which I was getting ready the next step. You see, the Pope, they're talking about bringing in this black Pope from Africa, which is significant when you consider watching Americans fall to their knees crying, and then Hollywood stars calling Obama our Lord and Savior, Barack Obama, like Jamie Foxx did. All these people, and it seems to be a racial thing, and it's making an uproar. That's all I'm
so
saying.
what would you? I guess my thing is that do you?
Philip, may I interject quickly?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, we've been talking for about an hour and a half, and I love eschatology, end time stuff. I do think that if we're not at the final hours, we're certainly about to enter into the end time scenario. There are too many things lining up. As far as Barack Obama, my understanding is Isaiah calls the Antichrist the Assyrian.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up. A couple days ago, we found out.
Brian, hold on. Brian,
Go ahead.
sorry, just hold the thought for a second, okay? If you're
Brian, you've got feedback.
Yeah, just hold on a second. I'm gonna shut down the chat. Not to shut down the chat room. We're gonna stay here and talk. I'm just gonna end the broadcast, and I just wanted to say goodbye to our viewing audience, and then we can continue the discussion. Is that cool? All right, cool. So I just want to thank everyone who's been watching. Thanks for tuning in. We'll do this again next week around the same time. Thanks everyone for participating, and everyone, let's wave goodbye all at the same time. Yay! All right, thanks everyone. Let's continue.